The Leafs sign veteran goaltender Martin Jones to a one-year deal. What does this tell us about how the Leafs are feeling about their goaltending situation? We'll get into all that and more on today's Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the August 11th edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. This episode is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. It's the official sportsbook of the Locked On Network. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. We got a busy day, Dave. There's some Leafs news we got to get to with them. The ears were ringing apparently in Leafs front office as we were talking about this on Wednesday's show. How the Maple Leafs need to go out and get themselves a third goaltender. They did just that. They went out and they got Marty Jones, who I think is actually a pretty solid number 3 goalie, probably even a little bit better than who we were talking about them potentially going after. So we'll talk about that. Also, the Leafs signed their first round pick today to his entry-level contract, and it's Friday, so we're doing Fan Friday. Dave, we've got a great guy coming on the show today, Blaine Hartley, going to join us in a little bit, and we'll see where his Leaf fandom comes from, get his thoughts on the offseason and what he thinks is going to come of this kind of new direction of the Maple Leafs. So we'll get into all that today on the show, but we got to start with the news of yesterday, and that was of the Maple Leafs signing Martin Jones, a goaltender, to add to the roster and add to the depth after we heard what happened with Matt Murray and him landing on LTIR. They needed somebody, so they go out and they get this cat. Marty Jones, 1 year, $875,000 AAV. Your thoughts, Dave?
And I just want to know, Cat Friendly, as we're talking about this, just tweeted out that of this contract, $100,000 was made in a signing bonus. So, it's actually pretty interesting that I've never seen like a contract kind of doled like that, where you get $100,000 in a signing bonus, whether you make the team or not. That's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, as you see on the graphic here, this is somebody who brings a lot of experience. The reason why I like. When you weren't here and I discussed the whole Brian Elliott rumors, I did touch on Martin Jones' name a little bit. Part of the reason why I never thought Martin Jones would be an option for the Leafs is just because I thought if a team looking for a proper backup would be looking for Martin Jones, because his numbers aren't earth-shattering. And last year, if you look at his numbers with the Kraken, they weren't great, but there was a stretch of time where he was pretty good with the Kraken, and they still were winning games too, which is what you expect from your backup. So that was kind of a twofold where I didn't think the Leafs, it makes sense for the Leafs to go after Martin Jones, just because I thought Martin Jones would want something with a little more, maybe a little more of an idea of what his playing time and what his role is going to be. I think with the Leafs, it's pretty clear that he's coming in as the third goalie kind of competition with Joseph Woll, but thought maybe he would try to find a team that maybe the competition wasn't going to be there, or maybe there was a clear path for him to be a backup full time.
Yeah, I share the same sentiment, and I think he did too. But at this point in the offseason, I'm guessing that no one backed up the Brinks truck and was willing to give him a number 2 role specifically. Probably at this point in the offseason, wherever he's going, it was going to be as a PTO or somewhere to compete for a backup role. And I'll be curious to see if he is given a chance to compete. I mean, I think we've all pretty much penciled in Samsonov as the 1 and Wall as the 2. So Martin Jones right now would be like the third goaltender on the depth chart. But Joseph Woll is still very unproven, right? Like, he's a guy who's got less than a dozen games of NHL experience, right? So you never know what could end up happening. Remember, Garrett Sparks was very much a guy that a lot of people liked and thought he was going to be, the next big thing for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He was excellent in the American League and then just couldn't really get it going in the NHL. Not to say that Joseph Woll is going to do the exact same thing. I'm just, doesn't mean just because he has a successful, junior career and then has a successful career in the minors that it's going to translate 100% of the time. And if not, Martin Jones is capable of being a backup and capable of playing a lot of games too, right? Like if this does become, a 60-40 split, Marty Jones could come up and play some games. Like you said, last year, he played 42 games for the Seattle Kraken and actually had a winning record, which is kind of, surprising when you think about a goalie that didn't play that well. He had a 299 goals against with an 866 save percentage. Somehow he was 27-13-3. Like the guy did win a lot of games for the Seattle Kraken. And to your point, I did notice, I went and I looked at his game logs just to see, okay, did he have some stretches where he was really good? The month of January, he was 9-2 with a 912 save percentage. In the playoffs, I think he put together a decent record with some with some play there. And the first 15 games of the season, he had a winning record with a 913 save percentage as well. Like we're talking about the guy who in the past has been a number one, his time in San Jose. I think he had 2 top 7 finishes in Vezina voting in 15-16 and 16-17. Very far away, obviously. We're not expecting that type of goaltending at this point from Martin Jones. But for a guy to come in as your third goalie who has this much experience, I think is a really good signing for the Maple Leafs and from Brad Treliving.
Yeah, I think it was, I think the lessons we learned from last year too, right? We talked about the reason why they need to add a third goalie to avoid those situations. And you look at the teams, a lot of teams in the NHL right now, you need 3. Vegas's case, you need 5 goaltenders to get through a season. So I think it's heads up thinking. I'm sure a lot of people were surprised that it ended up being Martin Jones. And I think, you just look at the lot of who was available. He's technically the best available of that group. He's not old, right? He's not over the hill in a lot of ways, like some of the other guys who are, Brian Elliott, 39? Like he's up there in age, right? This makes a lot more sense if you feel like you need someone that's going to be here. And look, he might not even be needed, and you put him on waivers, and I mean, you don't want to have to lose your.
Yeah, hopefully he sneaks through, right?
Yeah, and hope he sneaks through. There aren't many teams, I think, that unless they get into injury issues, they're going to be looking for a goaltender like a backup goaltender like Martin Jones. I know the Leafs have seen in the past where like a Curtis McElhinney gets picked up on waivers. It's kind of rare to see these guys get picked up too often, just because. But I mean, with Martin Jones' experience, he might take a flyer for sure.
Well, if that was the case, he probably would have signed there by now, right? Like you would think that if there was an NHL job up for grabs that a team felt he could come in and solidify the backup role, they probably would have signed him by now, and Toronto wouldn't have been able to swoop in and say, hey, we're going to give you the number 3 spot. That would have been kind of, silly for him to do that, I guess. It's not like he needs to rehabilitate his image or anything. He just kind of is what he is at this point. So yeah, like I unless an injury does occur, to your point, he's a guy who you should feel comfortable. He should slide through, and he's, he's not young by any means. So no one's going to look at him and say, hey, he could turn into something a la, what we saw happen with, Garrett Sparks and other guys who have been claimed off of waivers, in the past. Calvin Pickard was a guy who I think was claimed off waivers off the Maple Leafs once upon a time. But yeah, so we'll see what ends up, what comes of this. But what this does also signal to me, Dave, and I don't know, maybe you feel differently about this, but this certainly 100% tells me that they know Matt Murray out for the season. Like he's LTIR, and now it's like not even a question. He's completely sent out to Robida Island. There's not even going to be any sort of mid-season check-in, check-up to see what's up. No, this guy's done. He's never going to suit up again for the Maple Leafs ever again.
Yeah, there's a better chance they could try to trade him, if anything. Like, I don't see Matt Murray ever being around. Like, when they made that announcement, I said, like, they want him gone and out of the picture. And that's kind of where I think it's all going to lead. Without them saying it, they're pretty much saying it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we'll take a quick break and we get back. Easton Cowan signed his ELC, so we'll chat about that. And a change of plans in the preseason schedule for the Maple Leafs. We'll tell you about that. And we got Fan Friday coming up today as well. So in a little bit, Blaine Hartley going to join us to chat all things Leafs. Before we get into any of that, though, I got to tell you about one of today's show sponsors. Then, of course, it's our good friends over at FanDuel. Football season is about to kick off, and FanDuel is giving you a chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every single victory. You can use your bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. We are your hosts here at Locked On Leafs, a daily Maple Leafs-centric podcast. Down to 3 days a week for the remainder of the offseason, but in about 6 weeks or so, we'll be back to daily 5-day-week coverage in which you can find us wherever you get your audio podcast from, also up on YouTube for the video version as well. So we'll get to Fan Friday in a few moments, but before we get into any of that, Dave, Easton Cowan, the Leafs' #1 draft pick this year in the first round, which a lot of people, kind of scratched their heads at when he was selected 28th overall, wasn't anticipated to be a first-round pick. He has signed his entry-level deal with the Maple Leafs.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't, again, another contract I wasn't expecting to see signed. We already know that Easton Cowan's going to be with the OHL next year.
Yes.
I mean, if he's not in the NHL, he only has one other destination he can go to, and that's the OHL. So, yeah, I mean, now it's kind of brings into the fold of now the pressure is going to be on, the spotlight's going to be on him a lot more. Yeah, he'll be away from the team, but we know that as a draft pick or as a prospect of the Leafs, there's going to be a few more eyes on you now that you're drafted. And I'm curious, like, now I'll be watching a lot of London Knights games I was not watching in the past, and I'm very, very curious to see how he takes the added pressure of being a first round pick to him as he goes, and with a really good London Knights team. Like, this is a team that is trying to get back to being that powerhouse of the OHL after the last few years. They've been in the picture, but they're not like the London Knights that we've become to know.
Yeah, like, when Tkachuk and Marner were doing things, Corey Perry, Patrick Kane, like, they've had a number of years.
Oh, yeah.
That's like the OHL cycle, though. Like, every 4 years, you become a juggernaut, and then you kind of take a couple more years to retool, and then you're right back at it again. So, yeah, hopefully he can play some real meaningful games this year. And remember, like, for those who forget what Easton Cowan was all about, like, he broke out in the playoffs. His playoff performance is what rocketed him up the Maple Leafs draft board rankings, right? Like, he only had 20 goals through the regular season in like 60 something games. I say only 20. It's still a decent number for, a 17-year-old kid. But then he went out and he had 9 goals through 20 games as a point per game player in the playoffs. And I remember speaking with Carlo Koliakovo, who does the coverage for TSN Hockey, and he said to me, he really was impressed by, him in the final, the OHL final, so that Easton Cowan was the best player on the team in that round. So in that series, so he's a guy who really got going late, turned it on late, and hopefully he can parlay that into another really good draft +1 season. And hopefully, to your point, the fact that now all the eyeballs are on him and that he's got the money, he's got a contract. Hopefully that doesn't kind of get to his head at all, and he can just continue to develop and progress. And I'm sure a lot of Leaf fans will be watching more London Knights hockey throughout the season, I would imagine. Really quickly, too, before we get to our Fan Friday segment, a change of schedule for the Maple Leafs in the preseason. Not sure if anyone saw this news here, but the Leafs and Red Wings were scheduled to play a game on October 6th. That is now being changed to October 5th, and it's just a straight swap with Drake, the sixth god. Guess he's got a show there on the 7th, and he's like, want to just do a swap here, I can come in, get the 5th or the 6th and the 7th and pop off instead of having to stick around for an extra day. And the Leafs obliged. So now the game, if you planned on going on October 6th, which was a Friday, it's now on October 5th, which is a Thursday. So a little thirsty Thursday Leafs Wings preseason action, which, hey, maybe Easton Cowan will be in that game, right? Typically,
I don't know how many preseason games you've been to, Mike, but usually the last home preseason game, if I'm going to recommend anyone go to a preseason game,
that's the one.
Go to the last home game of the preseason schedule. That's usually when they put the NHL guys out there, and tickets will be affordable as well.
Yes, they will be affordable for sure. The first game is September 24th. That is in Ottawa. Then their first home game is on the 25th, the next day, in Toronto at Scotiabank. And they got a game against Buffalo, three against Montreal, and then they got 2 against Detroit to end it. What's that? 8 games? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 preseason games for the Maple Leafs this year. That is just too many. Like, why? You don't need to play 8 games. Get yourself 4 or 5 games, and let's get this season started. That is a crazy amount of preseason games. But anyway, the second last one, which is the final home game for the Leafs in the preseason, changed from October 6th to the 5th. All right, buddy, let's break. When we come back, we'll be joined by one of our fans of the show and a fan of the Maple Leafs. Blaine Hartley will join us for Fan Friday. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morassutti. More coming up next on the Locked On Leafs podcast. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. I'm Mike DiStefano with my co-host Dave Morassutti, and it's Friday, which means it's Fan Friday, and we are excited to bring one of the fans onto the show, and it's Blaine Hartley from Sarnia, Ontario. Blaine, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Just happy to have 2 guys like you to provide a lot of Leaf content in the dead days of summer. One of you is giving a little more than the other one. We don't have to get into the cruise ship talk, but you got to really give it the hard work when you're gone, right? You're drinking Mai Tais, and he's in here looking for guys like for me from Sarnia. I mean, that's digging.
Yes, Dave. We all appreciate the work that Dave did while I was away to keep this thing afloat so that when we come back, it was still a well-oiled machine. So we will definitely give our props to Dave there. So Blaine, I'm excited to get you on. We're excited about these Fan Friday segments, and I'm always, curious to see, how, people became, the fans that they are. So like, you've been a Leaf fan. How long have you been a Leaf fan, and kind of how did you become one? Was it down through generations or what?
Yeah. Just like a lot of curses can be, right? But I'm 36 years old. As long as I've been conscious of, this planet, I've been a Leaf fan. My grandfather put me in front of a TV, and he said, you're a Leaf fan. That's all there is to it. And, growing up, I remember watching games with him and seeing him yell at the TV, and I didn't get it then. And I'm going, Mom, he says he's a fan, but all he does is complain. And, that might be a dumbed down version of most of our fandom, right?
Oh, yeah. I joke. I got an Uncle Chris who I always kind of refer to. He's one of those old school fans. And, man, this guy, you would never think he's a fan because he just sits there and curses and hates everyone. But he's just a diehard Leafs fan. And there's a lot of guys like that.
A lot of I see on Twitter, the big joke is old man yells at cloud.
Yeah.
The funny thing is you started as a young one, and all of a sudden you're like, am I that old man now?
Yeah. No, we're all getting there. That's for sure. So you grew up, 36. So you would have grown up through the 2000s, late 90s, where the team was pretty good at that point during your childhood. So what are some of your favorite memories and, favorite players from that time?
I do still have memories of the 90s too, right? And I was kind of laughing at myself earlier thinking about this, and the Gilmore wraparound is one that every Leaf fan will remember or they've seen if they weren't alive for that point. And it's funny when you have to reach back really far for big memories like that. I seen that the original Jurassic Park came out that year, so that kind of goes to show you about how, like, the pain with being a Leaf fan at times, right? And with a lot of it, our team it can be defined more in big losses sometimes than big wins, because in our livelihoods, mine, I guess, and yours, obviously both, they haven't won the cup. There's never been the Raymond Bourque, come get your cup, or your Steve Yzerman, come get your cup. It's and I think that's what, to be a Leaf fan, what it's about is that the other fans hate our franchise, because to us, it's like we're the heavyweight boxer that keeps getting knocked down, and then everyone else is going, stay down. And we just keep coming back for more,
Well, and that's what always makes, like, I know so many people that say, how can you continue to cheer and support this team? It's just like, well, what, like, it's kind of ingrained in the DNA of this fan base. They've taken all the punishment, and I hear it all the time. I can't do it anymore with this team. I can't do it anymore with this team. Then come October, they're right back. I see those same people. They're up there on social media, or they're up there asking me about the Leafs. And I'm like, one time my cousin did that to me, and I was like, I thought you were done. I'm not talking to you about the Leafs. You said you were done.
We're all done in the moment. To be fair, I've never said that, and I'm not knocking anyone that does. It's an emotional thing to watch sports, especially if you can watch 70 to 82 games a year, plus hopefully, more than one round. The dedication of that, and then you got to remember, hockey's supposed to be fun to watch too, right? And for me, the memories, a lot of them that I have, obviously you talk about the 2000s and whatnot, like, having a team to beat the Sens that many times, and those rosters, in my opinion, where they iced better teams than we did, and it was a different era where you could clutch and grab a bit more. And when playoffs came, well, the whistles went away too, and just being a Leaf fan too, part of the memories is cracking a couple beers and watching the game with your friends, right?
Yeah.
And we all can talk about it, and anyone that's a Leafs fan has to be a hockey fan too, because there has to be more than just the blue and white for you to stick around, right? You still want to watch the game.
Oh, absolutely. We're chatting with Blaine Hartley, our Fan Friday person today. So let's kind of fast forward to what we got cooking right now, right? The Maple Leafs, they finally won a round. I mean, like, what was your experience like when you saw John Tavares score that overtime winner, and for the first time in nearly 20 years, you saw the Leafs get into the second round?
Even just you saying that right now, I get goosebumps. And that's as sad as it is for us, is one round will give me goosebumps, And to me, I thought we got outplayed by Tampa for the most part. I was there game one. Like, I'm a season ticket holder. I've got a package. And, you go to that arena and you see the towels going, and it's the stuff dreams are made of. Well, you know what? Your dream can be a nightmare pretty quick. That was a rough game one. But you know what? They toughed it out. It's funny, too. What a greasy goal it was to go in.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were. It was seeing eye shots, tricklers, like guys getting in the right spot at the right time. And then as soon as Florida happened, it just, I don't know if it was just the elation. You think that maybe they're going to be able to push farther, and then it doesn't happen. And it was left with disappointment, obviously. But, a lot of times we take this stuff personally. And we have to remember, too, like, it's not us on the ice. As much as I'm mad about the whole thing, like, the outcome isn't controlled by me. But, damn if I won't watch every single game.
And that's the thing, right? A lot of it gets easy kind of misplace where the blame should go in a lot of those cases. But what was your sentiment about all of that, and how the fans were kind of complaining about the refs during the series and how the team actually played?
I mean, there's calls that could have went either way. Like, I don't want to be that guy, because it's the old adage of, well, here comes the Leaf fans complaining about the referees again. Not like that their opinion matters to me, but I do think that when you look at the statistics of the Panthers, they were averaging, well over an extra penalty per game before that round, and it went right back to where it was before after it. Some of the plays, obviously, the Nyes one, I mean, you're looking at the bunting, the cross-check, but ultimately the lack of penalties or penalties wasn't what lost them this. Like, if your big guns don't show up, you're not going to win. And a lot of Florida's didn't either. But then it comes down to having a hot goaltender. And at that point, we had our third string in. No one expected Joseph Wall to be stepping in at that point to become someone we relied on.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. I mean, I remember saying right at the beginning, if this team needs Joseph Wall in the playoffs, that means that something bad has happened. And I mean, it got to a point where they needed him, and he was fine, he was good, and now it looks like he's going to be given an opportunity to be a full-time NHLer and be the backup to number 2. But we'll see what ends up happening.
I'm going to say, not to move too forward here, but I mean, is he? We just seen the signing the other day. And the thing about when new GMs come in with someone like Brad Treliving, he has no allegiance to. He didn't draft Joe Wall. He hasn't watched him develop. So not to go into the next part of what players we have, but he was came out and already quoted and saying that these guys start out fine, some of the young goalies, and then they aren't. So for him, when you sign a goalie like Martin Jones, I'm not sure what we'll see here. Obviously, you can speculate all you want, but I'm sure Joe Wall, he thought he was going to be walking into a backup position. Well, now he's got to be thinking, well, what's going on? If he even knows, because I guess he doesn't follow social media.
Yeah, I'm sure he's aware of what's going on there. We talked about it a little bit earlier on this podcast. So when you go and you listen back, you'll hear our thoughts. But essentially, yeah, I think Martin Jones, that signing is in a way competition to keep Wall on his toes. I think right now you would pencil them as 1, 2, 3, Samsonov, Wall, and Martin Jones. But to your point, the guy's got less than a dozen games of NHL experience. And I brought up Garrett Sparks as an example of someone who has a great minor league career, but then just never got it done. And he faltered once he got up to the NHL level. And you wished you had somebody in behind him. Well, now the Maple Leafs do in Martin Jones, where if, one of those guys falter, you got someone with NHL experience. So, yeah, I mean, Marty Jones, I think it was a shrewd signing, whether or not he plays many games for the big club or he just, is kind of one of those tweener guys, insurance, whatever you want to say. I the Leafs would prefer that a younger player like Joseph Wall, can play 25, 30 games and win a good portion of them. But we'll see what ends up happening there. I do want to get your thoughts. Go ahead.
Sorry, just to add on that, because when it comes to Martin Jones, he had 27 wins last year. And to me, that's not insignificant. And for me also with him, I don't know if he has the style to play with the team. Anyone that's watched him play, he's almost like the old Francois Lair trained big blocking style, massive rebounds. Our D-core is not known to be able to push people out of the paint. So I don't know how that would work if he does end up becoming it. But, I mean, he's going to have a chance to play in the preseason ever. And also, I mean, we know that Treliving's not done because look at how much money we still have to clear even with that signing. No one had Martin Jones on the Brad Treliving bingo board, did they?
No, definitely didn't. But you brought up the blue line and you brought up, the future and what might be coming of the Maple Leafs still in the next couple of weeks before we get to camp. What have you made of the direction of this team over the course of the offseason? Letting go of Kyle Dubas, bringing in Brad Treliving, the signings that he made, the ones he neglected to make. What have you made of the Maple Leafs since the offseason started?
I mean, the ones that he neglected to make were almost neglected us. And so I feel like the ones that, I wouldn't have given Luke Shen the money that he got in Nashville. Even some of the extra term that O'Reilly got, I wouldn't be too comfortable giving either. But they didn't want, I know that O'Reilly didn't want to be here, because of the pressure of so they say, whatever. We'll leave it at that, and thanks for being here. With Kyle Dubas, that was just a mess at the end anyway. And I don't know, I'm sure at some point someone will write a book, and we'll all find out the truth of what happened to it. But what we're left with today is Brad Treliving is here now, and we can only move forward, right? I don't hate the guy. People will call him a liar, blah, blah. He's a grown man with a family. He was the general manager of an NHL hockey team, and now he's a general manager somewhere else. So, good luck, Kyle. Brad Treliving runs the team now. For the signings, it's funny with him. He said, we're going to bring some more snot into the lineup. What a disgusting way to start your tender. But, a guy like Bertuzzi, for instance, that's someone who was penciled into a lot of trade boards over the years. Health. He didn't want to get the vax, so he couldn't come over here. That wasn't going to happen then, right? He's definitely an upgrade on Bunting, in my opinion. He creates space. He's willing to go into the paint.
How about the blue line though? You know, we look at the blue line. The only addition made was Klingberg. Other than that, there hasn't been anything else done there. Do you think this is it, or are you seeing something big going on that might be?
I don't know how big it will be, but I know it's not it yet. I mean, with the blue line, like I was going to say, like for a Carl Klingberg thing, Ray Ferraro said in his first game, the coach told him, "You're a threat at both ends of the ice," and I think that describes him. And he's a human turnstile in a lot of ways. Like he got burned a ton, playing in Anaheim, mind you, as well. But like even when you look at our blue line now, like who do you put him with? It's not like we only have one defensive defenseman. It's Brody. You know what I mean? Do you put him with him? Like it. I don't know.
I'm with you. Like I've very lukewarm on that one. Like I'm a little cold on that signing, the Reeves signing as well. I was quite cold on that one. Well, lastly, we'll end it with this. Obviously going into the season, I got to get a prediction from you. How do you think things play out for the Maple Leafs?
Well, I noticed. I mean, look, how many times are we all going to say it? Boston will take a step back. Well, I mean, if your first line center is Pavel Zacha, like, is it so wrong to say it now? Finally, can we finally be right to say it?
You would think, but I said that last year, and they went on to have the greatest season of all time.
You know what they did, and in true Bruins fashion, they shut a lot of Leaf fans up, though, didn't they?
Oh yeah, they certainly did.
So I think that the division, I really believe in this division. I think it's one of the toughest divisions right now in hockey. Buffalo is a team I really like. They got the two big stud horses on the back end, and they basically have two first-line centermen that have size. Ottawa's coming up. Detroit's made some nice marginal moves to move up too. I think the Leafs will be first or second in the division still, though. I mean, they still have great talent. If I was to make a Stanley Cup prediction, I'm going to go with Carolina like I do like every year, but maybe I'll be right. I mean, I'd rather the Leafs went but it's hard to imagine with the current makeup, especially we're unaware of what Willie's going to do, what they're going to do with that. I mean, I think that they're going to walk him to the end of UFA next year, but there's a lot of questions still. And I guess that's what makes summer still fun. There's nothing happening at all. And we're all still on the edge of our seat saying, what next, Brad Treliving? What's going on next?
Yeah. So we'll see what happens next, right? We weren't expecting that sign to come down yesterday. And even with the signing of Easton Cowan, I'm sure over the next 6 weeks, we'll see some PTOs and maybe another signing at some point. Yep. Or again, that big trade that, that might be in the works at some point to, help beef up that blue line. But we'll see. Blaine, really appreciate taking the time to join us. It was fun.
Thanks a lot, boys. I want to thank the Storm of Sarnia, Ontario as well for partially ruining that. And but yeah, boys, good catching up with you, and I'll keep listening. And you guys are doing a great job. So
keep safe, man.
Appreciate it, buddy. Take care.
Yep.
All right, good stuff. That was Blaine Hartley of Sarnia, Ontario, Locked On Leafs fan and big-time Maple Leafs fan. Pretty cool. Said he's got season tickets too. So
yeah,
I wish I had season tickets to the Maple Leafs. But no, we appreciate Blaine for coming on, sharing some of his thoughts and his fandom with us. And if you want to participate, be part of our Fan Friday segments going forward, make sure you reach out to one of us on social media and hopefully we can make it happen. I know I've had a couple of people reach out to me on Instagram and on Twitter, or you can even let us know in the comment section down below on YouTube as well. But you reach out to me at Mickey_Canuck, reach out to Dave at D_Morassutti. That does it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all podcast platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Again, follow us on our social medias, and you can follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. Throw a DM to Locked On Leafs if you want to join as well. Leave a comment down below on YouTube, and we'll be back with another episode for you guys on Monday. Enjoy the weekend. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.